On today's episode of the Ops Review, we'll be talking about the top 5 actions every SMB should take to secure their infrastructure, including some products and services that will help you achieve a good security footing. So let's get started. Hey everyone, this is Aaron from OpsGlue. If you're a small business owner or operator feeling overwhelmed, confused, or downright frightened by the ever-changing tech landscape, then you have come to the right place. Welcome to the Ops Review Podcast, your guide to navigating the exciting and sometimes confusing world of technology. Each week we will discuss the challenges small businesses face, from cybersecurity and cloud computing to automation and data management. So get ready to take your tech game to the next level. Number 5, Antivirus and Firewall. Having good antivirus software has always been important. Malicious software has been around from the early days of personal computing, and it will continue as long as there's profit to be made or some political agenda to progress. Cybercriminals today have gotten sophisticated with their attacks and purpose. They're using these tactics to steal personal data, to sell in the black market, encrypt your computer to hold it for ransom, again, to make more money. Even nation-state actors steal corporate trade secrets to give themselves a competitive advantage. There's some great examples of clones of fighter jets and helicopters and drones that the U.S. government has and the Chinese government have, all from being plans stolen and exfiltrated from defense contractors. This is why having antivirus software is a non-negotiable. You must have this on every computer, server in your network. You've got to have it. It's must have. The next thing we'll talk about is a firewall. And this is another equally important piece of software. If you don't know what a firewall is, I'll give you an analogy. Every house or business has a street address. They have a house number or business building number and a street address. This is how the post office identifies where to send your mail. So your mail comes into your mailbox. You go to your mailbox, you pull out your mail, and you sort your mail. You say, okay, this is relevant. This is junk. This is a bill. This is junk. This is a letter from my aunt. This is junk. And you take that junk and you throw it in the trash. You take the relevant mail and you open it, and maybe one of those pieces of mail is for your spouse or your son or daughter, and you distribute to those individuals. So what a firewall does is very similar. It pretty much is at your mailbox, and as the postman comes and tries to put the junk in the mailbox, it just throws it out immediately. Wouldn't that be great if you had that in real life? But hey, that's what it does for a computer. Having a properly configured firewall is an easy way to prevent unwanted access. It's also best practice to have one on the edge at your internet, in our analogy, at your post box, and on every computer or server within your network. That way you have protection across the board. You're not allowing traffic between computers in your network or between computers and your firewall or your post box. Let's talk about a couple of the products on the market. And there are a ton in this space, some better than others, some mediocre, but we're going to just talk about a few. These are a couple of the top players, and one of them is Windows Defender for Endpoint. Now, this is different from Windows Defender that comes on your home PC. This is a little more advanced. It's got some additional features. And this comes with your E3 or E5 license. So if you already have one of those license tiers, then you get this already, which is great. It also runs on Windows and Mac, and it's really highly rated. Microsoft invests a ton of money into cybersecurity. And if you think about it, Windows is deployed on almost all the devices in the world. It's got a huge market share, and it's in their interest to make this as secure as possible, to keep their reputation as clean as possible, right? Windows already sort of has a bad rap for virus and all of that stuff, but that's because everybody uses it, so it's the biggest target. CrowdStrike is another highly rated software that does antivirus and firewall. It is one of the top products out there. It runs on Windows and Mac as well. And it's a little expensive compared to Windows Defender that comes with your E3 or E5 license that you likely already have. So the $99 a device per year, but you have to buy a minimum of 5 devices. So you're looking at, $500 a year minimum just to run CrowdStrike. Now there are others. Trend Micro for Business runs on Windows and Mac, McAfee, Norton, all of those other software. So I've got a couple links in the blog post that's linked in the show notes or the show description to Gartner. They have a comparison of some of these other tools and some of the research links to some of the research that we've done. Okay, number 4, update your software. Keep your software up to date. Regularly check for security patches. Set up automatic updates so you get the latest fixes when they're available. And I got a link to how to do that in Windows and macOS in the blog post. This is important. 60% of breach victims said they were breached due to an unpatched known vulnerability where the patch was not applied. Even higher portion, 62%, claimed they were aware of the organization's vulnerability before the breach. So that means they knew there was a vulnerability, they didn't bother patching, and they got breached. So some applications might not have automatic update capability. And if that is the case, check for a newsletter you can sign up to or some kind of update mailing list that you can sign up for just to keep on top of when there's a new version available. If you're not getting any updates from the vendor, you might want to reach out to them and find out what's going on, because the likelihood that they have not put some kind of piece of software that is vulnerable into their software it's pretty slim. So if you're not getting regular updates, I don't know what the time frame is, maybe at least monthly, quarterly maybe, then you might want to consider changing software because it's probably full of bugs and vulnerabilities, and you just don't want that stuff running. For all of our clients, we keep them on the long-term stable version of Windows, which gets regular security fixes. It's a little behind on the feature set, but it keeps it stable and keeps it patched with the latest fixes from Microsoft. So to sum it up, make sure everything's patched. If you can use like Intune or some kind of MDM management software to keep your systems up to date, an asset tracker or any of those things are very useful to monitor which systems are out of date and which ones needs patching. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break and then we'll get back to the final 3. Hey everyone, Aaron from OpsGloom. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you find value in this podcast. We bring this content to you every week for free to help you learn and navigate some of the complex technology decisions. We do it without any paid ads, sponsorships, and we do not endorse any of the products mentioned in the podcast. If you find value in this podcast, I'm only asking that you follow and like us on social media, check out our blog post, or sign up for the monthly Ops Review newsletter. Links to our social media pages and how to sign up for the newsletter are in the description. Now, back to the show. Okay, welcome back. Number 3, two-factor authentication and single sign-on. There was a report from Google Cloud's 2023 Threat Horizons that says 86% of breaches involve stolen credentials, and credential issues account for over 60% of compromised factors, which could be addressed by stronger identity management practices. One of the stronger identity management practices you can implement is two-factor authentication. Think of it as like double locking your account, one with a password and another with a secret code or fingerprint or even your Face ID. It's pretty common now to see, like if you have an iPhone, you get a Face ID scan and it'll open up the app, or on your PC or Mac, you have the fingerprint sensors on most of them these days. This prevents someone who gets your password from being able to use it. So if they know your password, it got leaked on the dark web and somebody went to your website or your email, typed in your username, your password, it would prompt them for the second authentication method, effectively locking them out of your account because you wouldn't know this other secret. The next thing you should be considering is single sign-on. And single sign-on would use one credential for many apps. And a great example of this would be your Google or Microsoft account. You go to a lot of websites and it says, hey, log in with Google. And the great thing about that is, A, Google deals with the authentication piece. B, it is only one password you have to remember. And that's a good point, because if you have multiple passwords and lots of them, we tend to make them easy to remember, and that makes it easy to hack, right? So having a single sign-on option is great. And for small businesses, what we've done is we've set up all of the Windows machines to be Active Directory joined. This is Azure AD joined. They call it Microsoft Intra now. But all of the computers in our clients log in through Active Directory. They log into their computer, their email, all with the same credentials. And we can even take those and hook it to third-party applications like ADP to create single sign-on opportunities there. Help desk services and a lot of other applications support the same mechanisms. This creates an easier environment for your end users, plus a lot more safer environment. If a password is compromised or an account is compromised, it can be disabled, and it disables it across all of those applications. Number 2, keep your data backed up and encrypted. First, we're going to talk about OneDrive. OneDrive for Business uses versioning, and it's enabled by default to help protect your files from some types of ransomware. Well, this isn't just the only reason you want to back up your data. It's your hard drive fails or various other reasons, but ransomware is a really good reason to keep a backup. The versioning also allows you to roll back to predated files from either a ransomware attack or a mistake. Somebody accidentally deletes the files, or you have changed something you can't figure out how to recover from. Microsoft also keeps these files in the recycling bin for 93 days. In the event the file was deleted maliciously or by accident, they can still be recovered up to 93 days, which is a pretty long time. So if you haven't figured out by then that you got a problem, well, it's gone after 93 days, but that's still pretty good. Moving on to another cloud storage product would be Dropbox. It's fundamentally the same as OneDrive. It also offers the versioning we just talked about. It provides some additional ransomware protection through alerting. So it uses some kind of probably AI to do anomaly detection and say, hey, this looks different. I'm going to alert you that there could be something odd here. And again, like OneDrive, it also has the ability to recover from deleted files, although it wasn't clear in the documentation what the retention period is. Microsoft explicitly calls out 93 days. I couldn't find how long Dropbox keeps their data for. So what about servers? So there's a couple options for servers. If you're in the cloud, you have Amazon. There's the Amazon AWS backup. It's for backing up VMs. There's also automated backups you can do for RDS. If you're not familiar with the RDS, that's their relational database service. So if you have a database like Postgres or any of those things, you can set up automatic backups for those. Now, if you're running on-prem and you're running in Azure, you can also use the Azure Backup. And Azure Backup can run for VMs hosted in Azure, and it can also run on-prem. And you can use this Mars agent to back up Windows file servers on-prem into the cloud. And we use this for our clients. We have a couple file servers on one client that we back up regularly, lots of data to the cloud, and we have very long retention policies for keeping this data in case something happens. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, number one, educate employees on cybersecurity and phishing. This has got to be one of the most important things you could do to mitigate your risk. And, if you haven't figured out by now, I love numbers. So I'll quote some numbers here. So there was a joint study by Stanford University professor Jeff Hancock and a security firm, and I might get the name wrong, Tessin? I'm not sure how to exactly say it, but what they found was 88% of data breach incidents were caused by employee mistakes. And a similar study out of IBM found that they found 95%. So if you can imagine simply educating your employees on some of these tactics used in phishing and malware distribution and things like that will go miles to keeping your environment secure. You need to teach your employees how to identify suspicious emails, teach them not to click on unknown links from people they don't know or email sources they haven't identified before. They don't know the person that's sending it, and report any concerns they have. If they're unsure, they need to talk to their IT professional and ask them what their thoughts are. So you have to make security education a priority within your company culture. And I would say you need to be doing this at least once a year, and that's probably not enough. You probably want to do like a big module once a year and then small modules every quarter just to keep people up to date, refreshed. And it's a changing landscape. So there's new attacks, new techniques coming out all the time. So having a regular cadence will definitely keep your employees up to speed. And I know it sounds like a lot of time and they got work to do. You got a business to run. But I tell you, if you get compromised, it could be terrible to your reputation with your customers. It could also be a lot of downtime, and it really is worth carving out 30 minutes a quarter to get your employees to do some cybersecurity training, because a lot of people just really they don't know what to look for to identify this stuff. One of the products we like is Know Before. It's from a company that Kevin Mitnick started. And if you don't know who Kevin Mitnick is, he's a former hacker turned consultant after a few run-ins with the law. He was famous for several hacks in the 80s and 90s using mostly social engineering. And that's really what these phishing attacks are. And it's getting more sophisticated with AI. They're going to be able to start calling you up and replicating voices and things like that. And your employees need to know how to identify these things and maybe even setting code words and things like that. And we talked about a little bit of that in previous episode on AI. But the point is, get your employees trained and keep them routinely trained. And again, we like this product because it's not very expensive and they keep it up to date, and it's very specific to cybersecurity training. Okay, let's do a recap. We got number 5, antivirus and firewall. Again, firewall on the front, antivirus on your email and on your workstations, keeping those nice and secure. 4, update your software, keep that up to date, keeps those vulnerabilities patched, reduces the risks of viruses actually being able to exploit. Number 3, 2-factor authentication and single sign-on, keeping your passwords effectively safe if they're compromised because they need that second token. And the single sign-on really reducing the risk your employees are creating easy passwords because they have so many of them to remember, so they only have to have one to remember. And a lot of times single sign-on, you don't even have to put your password in again. Okay, and then number 2, we're talking keep your data backed up and encrypted. This will help protect you from data loss, ransomware, any of those other types of events where you might lose data due to human error, again, ransomware or some other type of attack. And finally, arguably the most important, number 1, educate your employees on cybersecurity and phishing. This will be money well spent tenfold, because if you can prevent attacks before they happen, it's worth every ounce of time and energy put into it. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do me a favor, if you are not following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, or whatever you call it, please do. I also encourage you to sign up for the monthly Ops Review newsletter to help you stay on top of emerging trends. We also throw in some helpful tips from time to time. Please join us next week for another great show.